Hello and welcome to Elevate Your Wellbeing, Contagious Care. And for those of you who are new today, and I know there could well be with many new members having come just from us talking, John and myself talking to a relationships Zoom session on Sunday night, which was such an honor. And so welcome all those new members who have come in from that I haven't had a chance to welcome you in a formal way on the Facebook Live, on the Facebook group, but I'm welcoming you now in a live fashion. It's so wonderful to have you here. And today's session is on working through shame. For those of you who keep up with what I inform you on the Facebook group, you would know that it was going to be working through your shame towards self-forgiveness. So I've got something to share that I'm a teensy-weensy, tiny bit ashamed about, like 1,000,000%, not a big deal. I've changed the topic for today, and we're only working through your shame. Reason? It's such a huge topic. I couldn't add finding self-forgiveness in that same topic. I'd be speaking to you for an hour, and I really am aiming to keep it to the 30 minutes, and I'm not doing such a good job at that either. So stay cozy, Heather. I am. It's a very windy day here in Kiama. So welcome Amanda, welcome David, welcome Annie and Margaret. And it's lovely to, I know there's a couple more on, but I've missed you. Well, welcome William. So please tell me today just how you're feeling on a scale of 1 to 10. How would you rate your well-being? Just a number from 1 to 10, and why that might be so. If you're feeling good, let us know what has made you have that well-being state at this hour of the morning for those of us who are in Australia. So working through our shame, we all have it. I'd have to say it's one of the most difficult emotions, I think the worst emotion, and primarily so from my point of view is because most of us aren't even aware of how to go about dealing with it, because we're so unconscious of what is going on inside us when we actually do feel shame. So what is shame? Let's start off with a definition. Pardon me. Shame. Tell me your definitions while I'm having a drink. Tell me what you think shame is. Thanks for just putting it in the chat box. So shame is an unpleasant self-conscious feeling that's associated with a negative self-evaluation. It's expressed in wanting to withdraw, feeling worthless, and often feeling very exposed, which makes us feel more humiliated. It's a bit different to guilt, but I'll go on to that on another session. It's also connected to mistrust and a sense of powerlessness. When was the last time you felt shame? Think about that for a moment. Perhaps you didn't show yourself to be the parent that you really wanted to be, that you know you can be. That happened for me just yesterday. And I needed to face that so it's not carrying on in my life today. So there are all little tones of shame that we can feel. There are medium-sized shames and there are massive-sized shame. It might be feeling embarrassed in front of your colleagues, how you might have felt if you were laid off from work through this COVID time. And I'll talk a bit more about that, the relevancy of feeling shame through this COVID time. Or it might be shame from feeling disappointed in knowing that you could have behaved better, but you let somebody down in some way. You just weren't the person, you just didn't show up in a way that you really wanted to. It's not a nice feeling. Can you remember other feelings that go with shame? Just put them in the chat box. Any feelings that have gone with shame for you, that are associated with shame. Annie's saying she's feeling pretty good today, out walking under a warm blue sky in Tumut, Annie. How good is that? And listening to my session, so feeling grateful. What a great thing to do while you're walking. I know of somebody else who every day, she's been a silent member until she just texted me how much she's getting out of these sessions. And she every day listens to it while she's riding her bike. So yeah, there's so many ways that you can listen to these sessions. So good on you, Annie. William's saying today, going through a divorce, feeling a sense of failure. And you know, William, often that can feel the case when there has been a relationship that has broken down. But there's also a way forward where you can know that what you can learn from that experience goes into your treasure chest of meanings and learnings and treasures that you can, not treasures in a situation like this right now, but you can look, many people I know who I have counseled look back on that time and see the things they have learnt from that situation, and then in a different space, and can find some treasures through that dark, that very, very dark period. The important thing is to acknowledge what could have we done differently, rather than seeing ourselves as a failure, because we are not a failure. It's looking at what we might have been able to do differently and owning that, but not owning the things that do not belong to us, that belong to the other person. It's being able to separate that. So thank you for your honesty, William. I really appreciate that. And because of that, I'm going to send you my book, William, Elevate Your Wellbeing, which really looks at 10 different aspects of well-being through some mighty good authors that I was very privileged to become one of them, and they draw from their area of expertise on how to enhance your well-being. And particularly my chapter looks at how to do that through a crisis, and the 2-day workshop on forgiveness of the people who've done us wrong, but also self-forgiveness. I might alert you all to that because often shame is if we're working through shame, we do need to be working through forgiveness, whether it's forgiveness of ourselves, forgiveness of others, and forgiveness of just acknowledging what could have been but isn't. And so, yeah, I really, please, William, send me your address, and I would love to give that free book to you. And Annie's saying, I feel shame when I don't face situations as I should. And William's saying, thank you, but I already have the book and have enjoyed reading it. Oh, well, good on you, William. That's great news. Glad you have got the book already and have enjoyed reading it. So yes, Annie, when we don't face situations as we should, there's that shame that can become upon us. And there's, you know, there's an astronomical increase of people who are struggling to face their own shame. So yes, it is when we don't face situations as we would like to. I'm going to look at that word should in a minute, Annie, because often it's the shoulds that we put onto us that make us feel more shame, and sometimes more shame than we need to have. We don't deserve that shame that we often put on us. So there's such an increase in people who just are not facing their own shame. And when we look at the epidemic of narcissism, the major cause of narcissism is an unwillingness to face our shame. So in the book Shame, Free Yourself, Find Joy and Build True Self-Esteem, and that's written by Joseph Burgo, he says someone who becomes a narcissist decides, I'm not going to be this shame-ridden, damaged person. Instead, I'm going to be this winner. And therefore, that arrogance and sense of entitlement develops in the person because they're hiding, they're running away from what needs to be faced, the shame that needs to be faced in order to move through it. So this session could have been called Facing Our Own Shame, because that's the first step in order to work through it. You cannot work through anything unless you face it fully head on first. So these defenses that this author, Joseph Burgo, talks about can take hold, the defenses of putting on another mask or a mask that clouds the shame that we need to face. And it's a huge defense that takes hold, and the more shame that that person feels, the more they defend against it. This is a major cause of narcissism. You defend against the shame, so you don't want to look at it, and it becomes, in your denial, it's like a shell walling the person off from the central feeling of defect or damage within themselves. So they don't want to face their wrongdoing. Brene Brown, and many of you would have heard of her books in Rising Strong, and she's written a number of books. She's a wonderful social work researcher on shame, social worker, but then has become a brilliant researcher on shame. She's done a number of TED Talks, and she talks about when we experience shame, we have three choices. One, if we don't want to face it, we will inflict it on others. And relationship information 101, your relationship will be damaged when you inflict your shame on others. The second thing, she says, we have a choice to pretend it's not happening. I talked about denial. Okay, we can just shut ourselves, like be an ostrich in the sand, pretend that shame isn't happening, and just go into ourselves and implode, and then that will take us down. That will completely bring us into depression if we do not face our shame and just ignore it and deny that it's happening. The third choice is the positive one, the only healthy one, and it is owning it and working through it. You know, one of the ugly fruits of shame is blame, as Brene Brown says, inflicting it on others. Blame is discharging your anger to make it someone else's fault. It takes off your accountability and it brings complete disconnection. So how do we deal with our shame in a healthy fashion without dumping it on others or going into total denial? How can we own it and work through it? I want to hear from you in the chat box right now. Please engage with me. What ways have you found helpful in your life to face your own shame and to start taking those steps to work through it? I'm going to give you 6 steps on how to overcome your shame. but I'm looking for your wisdom. We've all got fantastic wisdom in this group. It's not just me providing it to you, it's you providing it to each other. And I'm so excited about the numbers of people who have come into this group. I think we're 320 something now, and people are seeing, like, there's 340 and 350 views on some of the sessions. There's a wealth of wisdom in this group. I would love for you to be able to share it with each other. So don't be afraid of coming on in. I know there are a few people that I missed in saying hi to, and I can't go back to that now, but I know it was Amanda and David. Yes, so please come on in with your wealth of wisdom here on what you can do to own your own shame in your life. We've all got it. It's just like, you know, we've got, what do we all have? We all have eyebrows. We all have ears. We all have some levels of shame. So Mindy is saying forgiveness of myself for one. That's right, Mindy. And that's why I wanted to look at self-forgiveness as another whole topic, which we'll explore in a couple of weeks, because didn't want to shortchange that topic. It's so important. And Margaret's saying, looking at my behavior. Good on you, Margaret. We cannot face anything until we take a good, honest look in the mirror. It's like trying to put makeup on, I guess, without a mirror. How would we do that? How would we try and make our face look better if we don't look at the mirror first to see the blemishes or spots that we want to cover up, okay? Or deal with. Let's not say cover up, because I want this metaphor to work with shame. So we don't want to cover up shame. We want to face it by taking an honest look at ourselves. And that means looking in the mirror to our soul, looking at the inside before we look at anything on the outside, looking at our own soul, our attitudes, what we have towards others and even ourselves. And Amanda is saying being honest with ourselves. Thank you. Great wisdom from all of you there. William's saying accepting that I have shame first before I can move forward. Absolutely brilliant. So thank you. Keep rolling those in, those comments. It's great wisdom to share with the group, and you will help others learn from this. So how do you overcome shame? 6 steps I'm going to give you. Take a pen and paper now if you wish. So number 1, know what triggers your shame. Okay? Often with trauma, the memory takes over all our senses, and we feel as if it's re-happening. You can remember the wound of what you feel ashamed about, but do not become that wound. As long as you own the story, you can heal from it. If you don't own it, you become the wound itself. So as you've been saying, look at your behavior, accepting that you have shame. Owning that is part of being able to move forward. That's number 1. You see, we all experience triggers, and if we don't know our triggers, we will keep repeating them. Know what triggers your shame. I call triggers emotional allergies, and I'll give you a complete session on emotional allergies later down the track. I do a very detailed thing in my book, Elevate Your Wellbeing, that looks at the difference, the commonalities between physical allergies and emotional allergies. And there's a lot of diagrams in this that really help you understand the power that your triggers or emotional allergies will have over you if you don't look at them. So this is just a 1% snippet in this Facebook Live group, but you can deep dive into this in the Freedom Through Forgiveness 2-day program coming up in November, or the one-day program, Elevate Your Wellbeing, the workshop that I'm running here in our home in October, only taking limited numbers because of social distancing. But go onto the website if you want to see the flyers there, or the Facebook Live event. Put the flyers up there as well to help you deep dive into this area, because emotional allergies, understanding what triggers you is so important in order to face your shame. It's important that we have power over those emotional allergies rather than them having power over us. You see, who gets physical allergies? Tell me if you get a physical allergy. I get hay fever, and it's shocking. It takes over me until I get a tablet in me that actually, an antihistamine that will make a difference. And sometimes, if I don't get that tablet into me right at the very first second of noticing that allergy, I'm a goner, and I can be wiped out for 2 days, literally. It just knocks the stuffing out of me. Who else has physical allergies? Because the same results, the same ramifications of having physical allergies appear when we don't deal with a trigger that second that we notice it happening. So we need to be really, really aware and do something immediately so that we have power over it rather than it having power over us. It's such a vital part of being personally healthy and keeping our relationships healthy, understanding our emotional allergies. That's why it's part of the Elevate Your Wellbeing workshop and the Freedom Through Forgiveness. I do a whole hour and a half exercise in the Freedom Through Forgiveness workshop, understanding apology languages and understanding our emotional allergies. And I've seen the incredible, it's been such a privilege in seeing lives being transformed by people in this exercise that helps them to live a whole new life, now having power over the emotional allergies that have just dictated their life all until having done that particular exercise. So it's a really, really incredible privilege that I have an opportunity to witness when I run these workshops, and to see the life-changing aspects. It's such an encouraging part of my life that I have the privilege to witness. So that's number one, know what triggers your shame. Number two, acknowledge that we're all imperfect beings. Brené Brown talks about the gifts of imperfection. How can our imperfection be a gift? I remember as a young mum of 3 young children, my children with a messy house, a completely messy house one day, and a friend popped in feeling down, and it made her feel so much better just seeing my messy house and knowing that she wasn't on her own. Yes, it's so important to have goals. We looked a lot at goals at the beginning of these sessions and how to be focused on achieving them. But there's a real balance here. Many people are struggling with shame because they're living a life of shoulds. I should do this. I should be this type of person. And I'm just really wanting to acknowledge the importance of understanding what shoulds dictate our lives. So Mindy is saying, yes, hay fever was worse when I was younger. Annie's saying, I'm allergic to housework. Does that count? I'm sure it's just the dust. Yes, it is the dust. And you've understood the trigger. So you need to be saying, I can't do housework, Annie. I don't vacuum, I don't dust because I am allergic to dust mite also. So that's one great advantage, Annie. run with it. And if Peter doesn't like it, tell him to give me a ring. So the important thing here with living a life being dictated by shoulds, what are your shoulds that you are dictated by? I just want you to put in the chat box now any shoulds, any beliefs, limiting beliefs that you have that dictate your mindset that are crushing to you. Shoulds that you live by that actually don't empower you. You see, it's interesting. We all become slaves to limiting beliefs. We all have certain limiting beliefs, and we need to recognize what they are. These beliefs can disempower us with the self-talk we put into our brain. And it's really important that we recognize how we can not have to have those shoulds dictating our lives. Okay? I really value a verse in the Bible from Galatians chapter 5 verse 1, and it says that Jesus has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened by a yoke of slavery. Just imagine a yoke of slavery around us, that we are slaves to living a life of shoulds. I should do this, I should do that. Put in the chat bar, what shoulds do you live by? And what shoulds do you notice in the world that are just coming in on us all the time? Even through COVID, what shoulds do you live by that were told to you by your family of origin, or what you put on yourself, or what you notice the world putting onto us through media? I'm just going to give you some shoulds right now, but I want you to be putting in the chat box because I don't want to do all the talking here. I want to hear from you. Some shoulds we could live without. I'm just going to name a few. I should be the perfect partner. I should be the perfect wife or husband. Hello, we're all imperfect human beings. So that means I'm going to stuff up sometimes in my relationship with John. But if I have a should of being the perfect wife, I'm just going to start feeling shame, unnecessary shame. I need to accept that I make mistakes, and to ask for forgiveness in that. And we can apply that to, I should be the perfect friend. I should be the perfect neighbor, or the perfect worker, or the perfect colleague. This does us more harm than good when we put those shoulds onto us. So William's saying, when I'm told I should, I say, why should I? Hey, that's brilliant, William. Yeah, that's good internal talk. I love it. So other shoulds that you could live without. I should be able to endure difficult times without complaint. That's a should also that's very disempowering. I should never lose my temper. I should never make mistakes. We make mistakes every day. It's a part of life. Other shoulds. I should never be afraid. You know, there's all sorts of things that can bring up fear in our world. So it's really important that we can just acknowledge these fears and concerns rather than telling ourselves we should never be afraid. I should never be angry. I should never be jealous. I should be totally self-reliant. I should never have to ask for help. That's a crazy one, because I believe we are all in this together. We're all a community. And I love the word Ubuntu. We lived in a black community in South Africa in 1984 during apartheid days. And the word Ubuntu means being human and connected. I'm not me without you. It's a connection. And so to not ask for help, to actually have a mindset that tells us we cannot ask for help, is a crazy mindset, and it sets ourselves up for feeling shame when we can't do things on our own. I believe we're all meant to be, like the Ubuntu greeting, we're all meant to be connected with each other. And I have so many areas of deficit that I can't do, and it's great to be able to ask people to be able to help in that process. I didn't know how to start a Facebook Live group. I had to ask somebody. So it's really important to know that that connection is there. We're created to be a collective. What other shoulds do you put into your life? Kayla's saying, I should be able to manage it all. Yeah, that really brings us down, doesn't it, when we live by that should. Or I should exercise more for my well-being. You know, that's a good one, Amanda. You could just change the word should by, I could put an extra step towards exercising more for my well-being. I could do it rather than I should, because the should gives the heavy weightedness of it, and that disempowers us. So what are some other shoulds? I should be able to find a quick solution to every problem. I should be able to protect my family from all pain. Hey, pain is a growing experience for us all, and we can't, as parents, protect our children from pain, from all pain. I should make enough money so my family can afford blah, blah, blah. All these different shoulds create enormous stress, and it makes us a slave to this whole area of shoulds, and then we feel shame. I should be busy, otherwise I'm wasting my time. That's a good one in the Western world, isn't it? You hear that all the time. When people ask, how are you? They say, oh, I've been really busy, because that's where their identity comes from rather than from within, in who we are. Lots of people's identity comes from what they do, and the core identity, we weren't created to be doings, human doings. We were created as human beings, just to be within our soul. So there's countless other shoulds. I should have the energy to do all the things I must do. I should always look my best. That's a pressure. I should always be other members of my family, put other members of my family before me. Sometimes we need to give ourselves the oxygen mask in order to then be able to give to our other family members. We need to take time out. So, and the worst should, I should be perfect at all times. Such a heavy burden. So ask yourself, what are the shoulds you put in your life? When you become aware of them, then you can do something about eradicating them. So keep on flowing those terrible shoulds in, and what you can do about them. Put that in the chat box. So that's number 2. Acknowledge that you're an imperfect being. And perhaps ask yourself, what do you need to let go of today in who you should be, and choose to just be who you are? What right now do you want to let go of in who you tell yourself you should be? So number 3 on how do you overcome shame, give yourself a reality check. Self-talk like you would speak to your very best friend. You would care for your best friend. You would soothe them. You would comfort them. How would you comfort and encourage yourself when you feel shame, when you've faced your shame? Speak that soothing voice to yourself as you would to your very best friend. So in other words, become your very best friend to yourself. Number 4, face and work through what you feel vulnerable with and what you feel shame about. We've already talked about that at the beginning of the session, so that's an important one, to look honestly at yourself in the mirror and face it and ask, what do I feel vulnerable about? What am I ashamed about? And then number 5, reach out. Remember I said we're a community. Reach out to someone you trust. Number 6, share your story. It disempowers the pain and it replaces it with meaning and learnings, great learnings and purpose, a forward purpose when you can reach out and share your shame with somebody that you really, really trust. It lets go of the sting of that shame, and it also, by disempowering it, it helps to demolish it. Okay, but you need to face it, own it, recognize it first in order to be able to reach out to someone you trust and to share that pain and shame. Because as Brené Brown says, there are 3 things that shame needs in order to survive and thrive, and that is secrecy. Keep it all to yourself. Silence, don't tell a soul. And judgment, holding onto it and drowning yourself in self-judgment. Those are the 3 things that shame needs in order to survive and thrive. So make a decision today to stop doing those things. Shame cannot survive with being spoken of and by being met with empathy. So I encourage you today to have hope. I believe in hope, in doing things differently, and make that decision to actually discover more about this. Check out a number of different, there's another book on narcissism that's called The Life of I by Anne Mann. She's an Australian writer, and that's excellent. It looks a lot at shame because of the connection between shame and narcissism. But remember those 5 points. Know what triggers your shame. Look into your emotional allergies. Make a decision today to actually join one of the workshops that I do that acknowledges our individual emotional allergies. That gets you 3/4 of the way there. And I forgot to say I'm giving $50 off, $50 off your workshop for anyone who joins from this Facebook live group. So when you go onto my website and check those out, know that there's $50 off for each workshop that you do as a gift to you for investing into your life here. So know what triggers your shame. Acknowledge that we're all imperfect. Give yourself a reality check. Face and work through what you feel vulnerable with. Reach out to somebody you trust and share your story with them. So I'm going to close now, but until next time, we will look next session at, John, the famous guest speaker. Gosh, people enjoyed him last time. So he's coming back to join me next Tuesday, and we're going to look at different languages of apology, because that is the next step also to facing our shame. It's a step forward in moving towards deep reconciliation when we can understand the different languages of apology, which then help diminish our shame when we've received not only self-forgiveness that we can do, but forgiveness from the person who we've hurt. So I look forward to joining you next week with my wonderful man. And until next time, be brave, take action with what you've learnt today. Be life-giving and let your light shine. Thank you.